This is our agenda. I see that it says new on every single one of them. New modules. So sharing with you the new stuff in the app, the big side of things encompassing new modules.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of the new features that are supporting those new modules, but others that are just simply added to the current modules.
And then a new website, we just mentioned that, new plans. So we heard you loud and clear, and we have revised the plan so you get more people and less money and more features and buy it the way you want to. So that's really cool. We definitely listen on product and also the packaging side of things. And then the webinars, we talk a little bit more about those. So new modules, 2 new modules, which ones are they?
So the schedule module. If you're already a user, that schedule module used to be called the timeline. So we've elevated that to become its own module.
Because it's going to get some more features.
Yeah.
A lot of people are looking for dependencies and things like that.
Yeah. So now has been separated from the track and elevated. And now, yeah, exactly. It'll have more features to come.
And then the view module.
The view module. Yeah. That's the one we've had a lot of requests for. We're really excited to release this one here.
We've been the BIM app without BIM. And there's been a purpose to that. We have been focused on the boring stuff, but the boring essential things when it comes to agreeing on who does what, when, why, tying it to a purpose, understanding that commitment across teams, making it really visual, making that something that everyone can really agree to before they go and waste time. And now we're rounding that out with the verification, validation, the ability to bring in that deliverable to say, did you meet the objective? And we'll talk more about that in the coming slides. Truly
connecting the plan with the actual model. So that's been our goal.
A BIM execution plan now meets BIM. So what does it look like? We can see on the screen, so the plan module allows us to run BIM execution planning in the browser, go through work in progress through to publishing in piecemeal. The scope allows a visual communication of what has to happen, who is responsible, at what point in time, what information deliveries on each of those elements or on those design packages you need. The schedule allows you to drag and drop those tasks that have been automatically created to assign them and sequence them. And then the track allows you to filter for just your tasks potentially and status them. And then the view module allows us to see that list of activities, those tasks, see the responsibilities, filter out, see the model, drag and drop a model in, and then be able to check off, so verify as you go through. So that whole workflow allows a BIM manager or a project manager or a design team to create standards and manage their workflows from the inception and using templates to create a contract, to manage that through the process of building and tracking and managing, controlling, etc., and then validate and verify. And there's more to come in the view, but we'll talk more about it.
So the whole process is there for you. It just depends on which modules you want to use.
That's a great point. Yeah, some people just start with the plan module and improve their templates and standardize their processes. And that's really, really powerful just in itself. And the new packaging, as Louis said, it allows us to do that. So the big deal is this view module. Yeah, there's lots of other features that we'll talk about, but the view module is bringing in that deliverable, not only the 3D, but also the 2D modules as well. So let's talk about that.
We have many challenges when it comes to our BIM execution plan. One of them is agreement of, agreement of that plan. And that's what our plan module is for. However, when it comes to the scope, we have a lot of scope gap, scope overlap. So that's where our scope module can come in and really provide us a visual and collaborative agreement, and also just knowing exactly what is required for the project.
Yeah, sometimes there's a handover between one trade and another. As you can see on the screen here, in the structural estimate, maybe just 2D representation is required for the stairs and the architect is responsible, but in the MEP coordination, that's actually where there needs to be a 3D element, and it's actually by the structural engineer. And it's important to not only understand what that should be, what geometric representation it should be, but also whether there's any specific requirements. So on each of these cells, the data behind is telling us if there are any notes or if there are any attachments, if there are any information requirements. So for example, the asset handover model for this MEP system is actually just looking for some of these end conditions and some information. Maybe it's warranty details on certain items, like, for example, these plumbing fixtures. So we're really able to define clearly using the scope module who does what, when, and tie to the purpose, and understand the handover between them.
But it's also keeping it lean. So there's the flexibility about the scope module that allows you to just assign the exact scope you need for each BIM use, and not just have an umbrella bullet point list in the BIM execution plan that says we need these 20 parameters for everything in the project. Well, that could do a lot of waste or consume a lot of hours for unuseful information.
Unnecessary elements.
Yep.
So a lot of the time we see the plague of using whether it's a task information delivery plan, master information, but however you want to term it, whether it's asset information register, whether it's LOD matrix, whether it's a model progression specification, whatever you want to call these things. So we cringe when we see a table that's kind of completed with every single one of those cells that has some content required. What we look for is a lean deliverable. Yep. And this allows us to focus on what is required and make sure that there's a customer for each one.
Once you have those BIM scopes created, or uses or assignments for your milestones, coordinating that is been something of a challenge. Sequencing that, making sure that we align our models as if we were in construction. So virtually sequencing the models for more of a clash avoidance than to have to resolve and rework, spend numerous hours in coordination meetings for coordination and resolving clashes. So here, is a really good opportunity to take those tasks that are automatically created and drag and drop them and sequence within your team. So the beautiful thing about this is each team can schedule their own work and sequence, and then you're basically clicking a button to merge them all together and have those conversations and ask, hey, maybe these elements can be modeled before these, and then I can model around you instead of through you. So it's a really huge benefit for clash avoidance.
Definitely. Yep. And then understanding what the status is. Mm-hmm. When somebody has actually updated a task, being able to, instead of telling somebody else, sending an email, a lot of other ways of communicating that, but filtering just your tasks and then dragging from one column in a Kanban board, running a lean design management workflow. We also have the opportunity to print all of these cards and actually have that in-person session. And as Louis mentioned, running a clash avoidance workflow, because you can understand the sequencing between the tasks.
And all that's great, but what is all of that if you can't actually validate that? Or how do you actually know if this model is ready, right? What's a cost estimation model if you're missing scope? What's coordination going to look like if you don't even have the plumbing modeled, or certain areas, or some people are coordinating in different areas? This is our module to help that. Here we can align all of those tasks that are maybe ready for review, import that 3D model, and verify that those tasks either meet the geometry or reliability information, or if it's just simply modeled.
Yep. If you start using a model before you have checked that it is ready for that purpose, you could potentially suffer a huge amount of rework, a huge amount of waste. We sit in a lot of coordination meetings in our past where we say, hey, this is a problem because there's two people have modeled the same thing, or potentially where there's a missing scope, and you end up not having the right deliverables, and you end up finding the problems when you're using the analysis process rather than making sure those deliverables are ready for whatever that BIM use is, that model purpose. So if you have a model use that you want to, as Louis said, use for estimating, you need to go through to make sure that it's actually meeting the original requirements before you go and try and connect it to your estimate.
Yeah,
same thing for coordination. Are your
teams actually doing the work? Whether they're your internal teams that you want to just check, make sure that you provide a good model.
Is this our new office building? Is that right?
Yeah, that's our headquarters.
Cool. And we're sitting in the lobby. It actually does look like we're sitting inside of the model. So did you want to talk through the view module a bit more?
Yeah, so as you can see here, that you're uploaded a model, and maybe you want to check on the curtain walls. So here we're selecting the curtain walls. You can't pull up the information material. You can't open the card to see those requirements, but we're just verifying the curtain walls are there. We're verifying the exterior walls have been added, and browsing around the model. So
this is a simple example, but digging in deeper, you can measure in the model. You can cut cross sections from the model. You can see the 2D drawings as well in here. Yeah. You can interrogate a lot of different details about that. We are super pleased to partner with Autodesk to be able to provide a lot of this functionality as well. But what I'm really, really keen about next is how we start to automate a lot more of that, how we start to learn from that data behind the scenes, and how we can start to make that workflow even more seamless, even more visual, powerful,